Why am I nervous?
Because we didn't do one last week.
Just because of 1 week.
We're acting brand new. Did you guys miss us?
I hope so, because we missed you. If you didn't, too bad. I mean, clearly you did, because you're here.
I know. When you were like, oh, someone commented that they were waiting for an episode to come out. I was like, wow, people actually care.
I know. It's like, wait, you noticed we were gone?
I love that.
Me too.
So today we're going to be talking about how to... What was the title again?
I don't think we have one.
Oh.
I just know it's like, stop letting people hurt you and set boundaries
Oh,
or
yeah.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a title by the time this comes out.
If you guys didn't know, we actually don't plan our topics way ahead of time. We do more, we work around with what feels right in the moment. And
Yeah.
if we feel like we align, because we think that if we plan ahead of time, wait, that's not the way I want to say it. We feel that if we plan ahead of time in that moment, we may feel aligned to that, but then come day of, we might not.
Yeah.
So we have a list of like topics that we want to cover, and we usually just
pick. We pick like the morning of at the gym, and then we're like, all right, that's what we're talking. Or sometimes even once we get here.
Yeah.
And then we're like, right, that's the topic. Because that way our conversations are the most raw and vulnerable that they can be, instead of like it doesn't give us too much time to prepare, and we do that intentionally.
Yeah, and I love that.
Me too.
I like, yeah.
We cannot record. We cannot do a live taping or whatever it's called.
We just be laughing
So
half
bad.
of the time. This is the reality, guys. We just laugh most of the time.
Oh my god. I don't even know what we're laughing at. I forgot what we were saying.
Me too. I forgot. Anyway. So do we have some thoughts?
I know when you said it earlier, I had a lot of thoughts. I was like, my mind was just going. I don't know, do you want to start, or do you want me to start sharing some of my thoughts?
If you would like to start sharing.
So the little bit of preparation I did today, I was thinking about how I've had a very long journey with boundaries, because culturally I wasn't raised with them. I almost feel like I was raised with the opposite of boundaries. Like, I think culturally it was like, there's no such thing as boundaries. We're your family, so everyone's allowed to be all up in each other's space. And even I don't think it was intentional, because it's cultural, but I think not intentionally, even in a way that's very harmful. Like the story that came to mind when I was getting ready to come here was that one of the things that I was taught was to always respect elders. You know, and that was really like taught for me, was like, respect elders. If someone's older than you, you really need to respect them. And, you know, at first thought, that doesn't sound like a bad thing to teach your kids, right? But I actually found that was very hurtful for me growing up, because I remembered a specific situation when I was working in the corporate world. There was this older woman, and we worked in the same place. And because she was older, we didn't even work in the same department, but because she was older, for me, like, I've always, you know, I try to always be respectful towards people, but especially if you're older than me, in my mind, I'm like, I really need to respect you. And this lady, she was very rude, very manipulative, like, she was on one. She was on something. And she was just very, very rude. And I remember that I wouldn't stand up to her, because in my mind, I had this belief of like, she's older, so I have to respect her. So like, initially I wouldn't set boundaries with her. And I remember like, she would make me cry. Like, that's like, cause she would literally, I didn't even work for her or anything, but she would like pull me into her office and just like yell at me and like go off on me. Like, she was really intense. And a lot of people had issues with her, but because she was older and I would respect her, because I have to respect my elders, like, she would, I think, target me even more so, you know, because I wasn't setting boundaries. I wasn't standing up to her. And so I feel like that was one of the lessons where I had to learn and like start learning about boundaries and how important they are, and really had to kind of undo what I was taught and realize, like, just because someone's older than me, that doesn't mean they have earned my respect. And it also doesn't mean that I can't set boundaries with them, you know. And I even remember that story of like in church with that lady that pulled me aside with her son. I feel like to me, those were all situations where I should have set boundaries, and I didn't, because at that time I didn't know any better.
A few thoughts. I wrote down, well, first of all, the audacity of some people to even be on a power trip and feel like they can disrespect and cross boundaries, even boundaries that aren't spoken. But I think this is going to relate to so many people, I think the whole episode in general, because I think that when it comes to setting boundaries, we sometimes feel like we need to set boundaries or don't know how to set boundaries because we've never been taught how to set boundaries, how to stand up for ourselves, and how to even respect ourselves. So, for instance, this lady, I think she was just like on a power trip, right?
For sure.
On a power trip, and she felt like she can disrespect you, but to the level that you allowed for yourself to be respected too. Which, I mean, like in our culture, in our Hispanic, you know, upbringing and where we're from, we are taught that we need to respect elders. We need to respect our family members. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
But in doing that, we teach people how to respect and treat us.
Yep.
And I think there's like a double play when it comes to setting boundaries and the way people treat us, because yes, it's about you setting those boundaries, but it's setting those examples for people setting those boundaries to teach people how to respect you. And this person too, she was, I'm sure, like I said, there's like a double-edged sword here, because this lady too is probably lacking something in her life that made her feel like she needed to be in a power trip. She probably in an upbringing felt like she had no control, and she now is in a position where she has the control, that this is probably the only way that she knows how to express herself when she's in a role of control. But that doesn't make it okay for her to overstep your boundaries and disrespect you as a person.
Yeah.
So looking back, what would you have done differently?
I would have stood up to her right away. And not just her, it's like her and that other lady. And like there's so many people. And I feel like now I do it. Now I'm like, I would never, you know. But I think the me then would have just... And I don't think it's necessary to get into it with them, because I think there's a difference between like setting a boundary and like feeding the drama. And I think sometimes people are scared of boundaries because they think it means like conflict, right? And it, unfortunately, it can lead to that. But I think a boundary helps you avoid conflict, because I think the first time she crossed the line, I should have just very calmly but very confidently communicated to her, like, you know, like you cannot treat me this way. You know, if you have an issue, like you can just talk to me in a different way, or we need to figure it out. But this is not how we handle things in a professional setting. And if you cannot address it differently, then just don't address me at all. Because she wasn't my boss. She wasn't someone, like I had to kind of work with her, but she wasn't anyone that like had that position.
It was a power trip. Completely.
Yeah.
She felt like she had control. How do you think she would have taken that boundary if you would have said that with her?
Oh, I think she would have had a bitch fit, because like that's how she was. But that's the thing, is I think that we make other people's reactions our responsibility when it's not. What is our responsibility is our own reaction. So when somebody does something that is not okay, how are you going to react without, I don't want to say without worrying, because inevitably we think about, well, what are they going to say? But your reaction needs to hold more weight than the other person's reaction. But I think that stops us, that fear of like, what are they going to say, you know? And we have to just be okay with like, whatever they say is what they're going to say, but I need to say what I need to say to this person.
Why do you think it's easier for some people to set boundaries over other people, that it's harder for them to set the boundaries? Like, what do you think is the difference between someone who knows how and doesn't know how?
I think it's a mix of two things. I think it's having awareness around your self-worth, having self-respect, having self-love. I don't want to say you don't have it. I think you can have it, but more of that awareness too. I think for me, I needed to work on that for myself and have awareness around it, because once I had that self-love and self-respect, now I can expect that from others towards me,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But like you said, the only reason she was able to treat me that way was because I let her, you know. So I think that, and then also learning how to set boundaries. I think that there's, at least for me, I'm someone who learns like very practically. Like I need you to tell me like, do X, Y, and Z. You can teach me a theory or a method, but in my mind I'm like, okay, but how do I implement that in a very practical level? And so I know for me, I actually had to like learn in therapy. I remember reading books, like I had to actually learn, what is a boundary, how do you set it, what is, and I feel like I'm still learning, but at least for me it was like practical application. I don't know, what do you think is the difference?
The difference?
Yeah.
I think it could be a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-love, and a lack of self-respect. But I do think there are people who don't lack that, but are people pleasers. Because I do think many people pleasers, all of people pleasers actually, there's a reason why there's the term people pleaser, because you don't know how to set boundaries because you're afraid of hurting people or creating conflict. And I think that this really stems back to our childhood and the trauma that we have growing up with being a people pleaser. And because we were constantly in a state of wanting to prove to either our parents, our siblings, or our colleagues, like in school, our friends, that we're enough. I think because we get so caught in that, we create this pattern of people pleasing. So into our adulthood, it's hard for us to learn how to live our now adult life, because that was the only way we knew how to live when we were kids and teenagers. So now getting into our adult life, we're still trying to operate the same way we did because that's all our body knows how to do. But now it's different, because what used to work back then doesn't work in an adult setting, in this adult world. And I think it really stems back to our childhood and whether we are people pleasers to the core or not. And I do think there's an element of self-respect, self-love, and self-worth, but I think the majority of it is people pleasing.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
So how did, like, you know, with you, is there any stories you thought of or experiences, or like what has boundary setting been like for you?
It's been a journey all of my 20s, even now in my early 30s. I think my 20s was a ton of learning lessons, especially in business, of allowing people to walk over me and give their opinions of what they think I should do in business, and allowing them to do that. And then me then realizing like maybe that wasn't the best decision.
Why do you think you did that?
I think just because I was open to the idea of maybe doing business another way. Or maybe because this individual person had more experience in like the theater community or what it's like in entertainment. I was like, okay, like, you know, let's try this.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
maybe I can learn from them.
Yeah, maybe I can learn from it. But for me, it was just, instead of standing in my truth and being like, you know what, I don't think that the business can afford that financially at this moment, at least. Instead of voicing that, I wanted to say, I not that I wanted to say, but I would just say yes. Now in my early 30s, I feel like I have more boundaries set in place in my life, standards and expectations. And I just think it's going to be a lifelong journey of always having to set boundaries and having to know when to communicate with people. But yeah, I just feel like it's been a lifelong journey. I can't really think of like an exact situation where I had to set boundaries, but I do think it's been hard for me because of the people pleaser that I am to the core. And I think for me, it wasn't necessarily that in my home I felt like my needs weren't met or like I had to prove my parents. I think it was more of like my friends and like my colleagues. I always felt like really different. So I had to feel like I had to appease to them in order to be like liked by like my friends, because I didn't like whatever was like trending in the moment, and I'm still like that. So all of my
like
20s,
almost to fit in.
So all of my 20s has been me really just like owning my truth. And if people like me for me, they like me for me. If they don't, they don't. Yeah, that's basically what I have to say about that.
So do you feel like there was a moment where it started to shift and you started to set boundaries, or is it hard to like pinpoint when that happened?
No, I think I've really been implementing the boundaries in the past, like, I hate to say this, maybe like in the past year. It's so recent.
Yeah, well, it's hard. It's so hard to.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's been so recent for me because of the healing journey that I've been on, that I've started to realize that, like, hey, if you don't put boundaries in place for people, they're going to continue to walk all over you, and you're just going to be miserable because you're here trying to save everyone and appease to everyone, instead of saying, no, I'm not okay with that. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think that that's the right decision. I don't agree with that. That is not my opinion. So in the past, like, year, maybe a little bit over a year, is really when I started to implement the boundaries and really tell people no, and be okay with losing people if they don't like the boundaries that I've set in place. I've realized that the people that are meant to be in your life and that truly care about you are going to respect your boundaries.
Yeah.
And those that don't will walk away from your life. And those are the people that I've lost, are the people that couldn't handle my boundaries, couldn't handle me voicing me feeling uncomfortable or saying that I don't like X, Y, and Z. And if they walked out of my life because of it, then that's absolutely fine. That has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So.
And honestly, I think a lot of people will relate that regardless of age, like, for a lot of us, boundary setting does come later, if at all.
Yeah.
You know, so do you think, like, why do you think you decided to, in the last year, like, what made you realize, like, okay, I need to, you know, set boundaries even with being a people pleaser? Do you think you just kind of hit a point where you're like, I'm done, or like, what happened?
I think a part of it was also like just growing up. I think it was just growing up, and then also looking at like the cycles that I've continued to repeat in my life, because I'm not perfect, you know. I continue to repeat the same mistakes over and over. I'm someone that will not learn the first time, and probably not even the second time. And I, for some reason, I have to continuously make those mistakes for me to learn. And I've now been aware of that. Like, I'm aware enough now to understand that I can't continue doing that, especially at the age that I'm in. I need to learn from the moment someone disrespects me, crosses a boundary, makes me uncomfortable. And it was just a pattern of realizing that I didn't like my relationships and my situations that I kept getting into because I kept overcrossing my boundaries. So now I'm like very unapologetic about like telling you, I'm not okay with that. I do not agree. This is my opinion. Take it for what it is.
Yeah. So it's almost like you recognized a pattern and you realized, I don't like this pattern. So in order to change it, I have to do something differently.
Yeah, because like if you continuously allow for people to overstep your boundaries, you're self-sabotaging yourself at the end of the day. You're living to please other people, and you're constantly being put in the back burner.
And that's exhausting.
And that's not good. It should never be a full 1000% me, and it should never be a full 1000% whoever is crossing that boundary. Or is like making you uncomfortable. It should be I help you, you help me, let's get together. Because I don't think it should be in a selfish way where it's one or the other. It needs to be both, whether that's friends, whether that's family, whether that's your partner, whoever it is. There needs to be a mutual respect and a mutual respect of boundaries within whatever relationship you're in.
I don't know why, but what this is making me think of is like, because something I've been sitting with the last couple of weeks has been this concept that we all create our own reality. And I actually think that we live in a world where we're all living in different realities, and it's all just based on what our mindset is, right?
Our perception of it.
Yeah, and I think that's why we see some people who have incredible lives and this and that, and they manifest left and right, and then other people who don't, and we're just like, it's almost like we can see it, but we're living in different realities. And then I think when we see it and we want it, we're like, I want to get there. How do I get there? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think that boundaries is a huge part of that, because boundaries to me are really like your expectations, what you allow, what you don't allow, what your limitations are, what your rules are for how you expect to be treated, the kind of life you want to have, the kind of things you want to allow in and not allow in into your reality. And so when you begin to create those boundaries, you say, this is the reality that I want to live in, and anything outside of that that does not align with it cannot fit in here. It's not allowed to be here. So I feel like boundaries are that. It's like, what are the rules of my reality, and what is allowed and what is not allowed to exist here?
I think we kind of touched that on the previous episode.
We probably did.
I think with being in alignment.
Yes.
I think we did. The sound with that episode was terrible, so here it is.
Even better.
Even better. But no, I absolutely agree. And I think going back to the point that we made earlier, that there are multiple realities going on at once. But it's weird because we're all here collectively experiencing this human experience and being on earth, but somehow everyone's reality is different. That's because it's everyone's perception. But we're all like one. We're all one consciousness, but somehow we're all living in different realities. But to go back to the point that we made earlier, I think it all goes back to living in alignment and saying no to everything that doesn't align. I also think that we are here to co-create with other people as well, with other human beings on earth. We can't really accomplish anything on earth by ourselves. We always need the help of other people. But with those relationships in your life and with boundaries, you're teaching people how to respect you. You're teaching people how to treat you, and the people in your life and how they treat you. And if they're crossing your boundaries, it's because you have to take a look at yourself and see, am I projecting to other people, or am I showing people how to treat me? Am I showing people to respect me? Am I showing people that I respect my own boundaries? Am I showing people that I'm uncomfortable? Am I comfortable with voicing my own opinion? And if you're not, you need to take a step back and look at that, because if you don't even respect that yourself, you can't expect for other people to respect those boundaries that you have set in stone for you. So I just think, like, with the universe, with everyone here, with everyone that we share this human experience with, everything is all a mirror of ourselves. So I think at the end of the day, yes, we should set boundaries, but take a look at your relationship with yourself and see if you respect yourself, and if you even have boundaries in place, and that you're showing people how to treat you and respect you, and knowing when to say no to everything that doesn't align with you.
Yeah, I love that.
When did you start setting boundaries for yourself?
I feel like it was after I started going to therapy.
Okay.
Because even before that, I had a mentor tell me, like, you need to set boundaries with your family. And I remember at that time I was just like, because I was only a teenager. And I remember I was like, no, like I didn't even know what they were. And I had like zero interest in finding out what boundaries are or were at that point. And I feel like it was in therapy when I kind of started to do my inner healing work, and just having my therapist be like, you need to set boundaries, and and it finally explained. I finally like decided to be open to it, but for some reason I was very resistant to it. But I think when I finally decided to be open to it and to learn and understand that, like, because I saw it, I was like, okay, something's not working here. Similar to you, I was like, something's not working here. There's a pattern. How do I fix it? And finally being open to boundaries being that. So I do think for me it had to be like people I was seeking help from pointing it out to me and saying, like, because similar to you, like I learned from experience, and so much of my life has been that. And at first I would get annoyed because I'd be like, why do I have to go down the path in order to figure out that's not the path? Or to learn and see.
Well, I mean, that's the only way you would figure out that that's not the path, is by going.
It's true. But you would think, like, can I just, like, not,
Yeah.
And I feel like now in my 30s, I'm trying to just make wiser decisions and not have to go down the path, and trust my intuition more, trust what I have learned more, so that I'm not making the same mistakes. So I feel like it started in therapy, but I think it's been an ongoing journey, because I do think you have to kind of learn how to set boundaries in every area of life. And for me, it started with family. I think family was the first, maybe because that's what I was talking about in therapy. That was the first space where I had to learn to set boundaries, and that one's still ongoing. I feel like I'm trying to learn now in like dating and love. For some reason in business, it has come more naturally to me to set boundaries, and I think it's because I'm very protective of my energy, and maybe because I've been in business longer. Because I don't think I always had boundaries in business. I think I maybe that's the first area where I learned, and then family, and I feel like now like dating and love is like the next place where I'm really having to learn. Yeah.
Growing up as a kid, did you ever have people pleasing tendencies like with family? And do you think that has made it difficult with setting boundaries?
So I have to kind of think back because I didn't realize I was a people pleaser until about a year ago. So yes, I do think that I was, but I don't know, when I think about it, I'm kind of like, is anybody not a people pleaser? Because I feel like all of us to some extent want to feel like we fit in. We all want to feel wanted. We all want to belong. We all want to be part of a community. So I think that in a way we all have like people pleasing tendencies, you know? I don't know. Or do you think there's people that are not people pleasers?
I think so.
Really? I'm trying to think if I know anybody that's not.
I feel like I know a couple of people that are
Not.
that will just do them and
Say
don't
their
really
names. I'm just kidding.
and don't really like, it's not that they don't care about their family or their friends, it's just they don't feel liable for them. They just take care of themselves. Because I think I do have the tendency to want to save everyone. And I think that goes back to my people-pleasing tendencies. But, yeah, I don't know. I feel like a part of me wants to save everyone. Now I'm better about that. Now I know to shut my mouth. Not even, like, give my opinion, not give my advice. Unless someone is asking me for advice, then cool. But, like, I'm now in a position where I know that I can't save everyone, and that it's not even worth it to really, you know, give your advice or opinion to everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I feel that because I used to be that way too.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, oh, now looking back, because I would overextend myself for people.
Yes.
And that's when I realized, like, wait, I'm a people pleaser.
That's a people pleaser.
Like,
that's 1,000%.
But I think in my mind, I would tell myself, like, oh, I'm just trying to help people, and I just love so much, and I just whatever.
No.
It's because I'm so nurturing, you know? And then I realized, like, no, because actually what you're doing is you're taking away people's power when you try to do things for them that they should actually be doing for themselves.
So now I have another question. In this scenario that we're talking about with wanting to save people, would you find yourself putting your needs in the back burner to help these people? Or were you more like, oh, I'll take care of myself in the same capacity that I'm taking care of people? Were you saying yes to other people while saying no to you? Were you saying yes to other people while you were also saying yes to you?
No, I feel like I was saying yes to people at my expense.
Okay.
And I think that's how I knew, like, I think it was almost like having multiple experiences of burnout.
Yes.
You know, that's when I knew, because I was like, okay, I keep wearing myself out. Why? The only way that can happen is if you're continually putting yourself to the side and you're prioritizing everything and everyone else. And that's how you know you're not just a people pleaser, I think, because I think it can be more than just trying to please people. It can be trying to please your job, your career, trying to please like this, you know, false expectation that exists in society. It can be trying to please the pressure of something or someone. And I think people pleasing is just one of the many like pleasing, you know, tendencies that people have.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's what people pleasing is, and I think that that's why it's called people pleasing, is because you're constantly pleasing other people while not taking care of yourself. You're not nurturing your own own self while attending to the needs of other people while you're off to the side.
I guess the only reason I feel like it's not only people is because I think of something like let's say you're constantly overworking yourself because you want to make more money, you're not really like, if your purpose is just like, I need more money because I feel I have scarcity mindset and I'm scared it's going to run out or something. In my mind, I'm like, you're not really doing that for a person. You're doing it like for money or for this fear that you, like, the only person involved in that situation, I think, is yourself. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So to me, that would be like, you're trying to please like money, or please the fear in you that thinks it's like not enough, and you're trying to satisfy that fear. In the same way, in people pleasing, you're trying to like make the other person happy. I think in that situation, you're trying to make like money happy or the fear happy, that like, here, I'm giving you what you want and what you need at the expense of myself and my well-being.
I see. But I think that could be in the context of like something else. But I think in the context of people, that would be considered people pleasing.
You think so?
Yeah, but I see what you're saying though. I see what you're saying, because you're giving your power away instead of owning your own power. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and I feel like there's more, like, I feel like there's a lot of things that we do that for, even like just society, or, and I think a lot of it does go back to people, but I also feel like there's things that we do for others, other things other than people.
Yeah, and I think that's where I say that I think it goes back to the trauma we have as children and teenagers is the lack of.
Yes.
So if we have a scarcity mindset, well, were we raised with a scarcity mindset from our parents? Like, we can't afford that. We're not going to buy that toy because we can't afford that. Is it a scarcity mindset or a lack of mindset that you're people pleasing because you were looking for the validation of other people and you never got it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it all kind of sums back to when we're kids.
Yeah. I actually, if we want to get deep, I have a story I can
we
share.
We have time.
You guys, we do hour episodes and we are at 37 minutes.
We've got time.
And I didn't even tell you, this was the healing I did recently that I was going to tell you about, and we never talked about it.
Okay. Are you going to share it?
I am. Yay. On the podcast. You guys are hearing it the first time with Natalie. That's a big deal. She usually already knows everything. So I did a healing recently, and I actually feel like it's the perfect like picture for people pleasing starting so young. So in this healing, I was put into kind of like a hypnosis state and was taken back. I forget exactly what we were healing. Oh, it was the fear of being seen.
Oh.
That's what we were healing. Because I've always, and you kind of, about this. I've been, especially with my business, trying to make it more like me. And I've always hated that idea of like, I don't want to be an influencer and blah, blah, blah.
She's like, I hate influencers. They're so cringe.
If you're an influencer, I hate you. I'm just kidding.
I'm like, redefine what influencer means. Make it your own thing.
Apparently me. I'm just kidding. So I was very like, I don't want to be an influencer, blah, blah, blah. So I booked a healing, and we kind of got to the root of that, where it was like, why are you so scared to be an influencer? And it was really rooted in this fear of being seen. And so I've always hid myself in a lot of ways. So she was like, okay, we're going to heal this, get to the root of it. So she put me in this hypnosis state and kind of took me like back in time. And we were able to identify like where it started, and it was kind of trippy because I realized like it started in the womb, because the question that I was asked was like, did this happen before you were in the womb, or after? And I knew like subconsciously, I was like, nope, it started in the womb, which in my mind I'm like, that's freaking weird, like
how would you know that?
And also, how do you pick up a fear in the womb? But then it all just like made sense. And so when we went to that, what ended up coming out was I'm the firstborn in my family. And when my mom got pregnant, my dad really wanted a boy. And so, and I know these things because like my mom tells me these stories about how when she was pregnant, my dad would always address her belly as like, oh, like a boy, like talk to her like a boy and blah, blah, blah. And my dad would always be talking about how when this, little boy is born, he's going to play all these sports and do this and do that. So my dad had this like narrative as I was in the womb. And I do believe that in the womb, we are affected by what is happening.
1,000.
Yeah. And so,
I mean, they say, like, be careful when you're pregnant. Be careful of the things that you say, the things that you're eating, the things that you're surrounding yourself with, the energy that you're placing yourself into, because your baby absorbs all of that.
And
the
I believe
brain is developing.
I believe that even if your kid is, even like when I see people talking certain ways in front of kids, I'm like, they are taking, whether even if it's subconscious, they're taking this in.
Yeah.
And I believe that when you're pregnant too. And so in the womb, like me not realizing it, this narrative was being created. And the way that I believe we come in is like, you know, we're these souls, we enter, you know, our mother's womb, and then we come into the earth. And so that started creating this narrative for me of like, I'm not who I'm supposed to be. And also, like, I'm coming in at the wrong time. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. Because, you know, like, little me was thinking, like, oh, it's supposed to be a boy, but I'm a girl. And, like, am I not supposed to be born right now? Like, you know, just kind of these stories around that. And then I'm born, and it's like, it's a girl.
Surprise.
It's me. You know, and so I didn't realize, like, it created these stories for me of, like, you're never in the right place, like wrong place, wrong time. You're not what you're supposed to be, you know, just kind of had all these like negative like narratives around it. And so we had to heal it. And so without realizing it, I think that turned me into a people pleaser, you know, where it was like, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl, but look what I can do, you know. Aww, but like, look what
so
you know.
sad.
I mean, I'm fine. Like,
no, I know.
It brings some emotion for me, honestly.
No. I'm not sad for the you now.
You're sad for the old.
Yes.
You're like, you're fine.
I'm thinking of like little Nat, you know. So whenever I'm like, oh, like when we talk about like our childhood, and I'm like, oh, that makes me sad. It's not that like it affects us now,
but then,
I just think of you know little you.
Yes.
In that you know situation.
Yeah. And not realizing how like even in the womb I was already coming in, like I literally came into the earth with the stories of like, oh, am I not supposed to be here? Like, isn't this not the right timing, you know? So, and I think that I carried that, and I think inevitably as a child that made me be a people pleaser because I was trying to meet this expectation that I was never going to meet, which is be a boy. And I actually think that's part of what fed into my very like masculine energy early on, you know, was like, I'm supposed to be a boy and I can never be that, but let me try to do all these other things to see if I can still be good enough, even if I'm not quite what you want me to be. I know. I was like, I gotta share this.
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy?
That is insane, but it makes sense. Makes total sense.
So I think you're right in that like it's our traumas from childhood, you know, and that's why now I think so much, and I feel like I say this all the time, like I think so much about how I want to raise my kids.
Oh, for sure.
From the moment I conceive, because it's like everything you do, everything you say, like it impacts your child, you know, and I think that's where it started for me.
Yeah. And I think that's what terrifies me the most about being a parent is, I mean, yes, I'll lose my freedom. Yes, I'll lose the time.
Yes, my life will end.
My life will end. But I think what terrifies me the most is knowing that they are little humans that are going to turn into adults with, and I don't want to say that they're going to turn out with trauma and issues, but the reality is that even the most healthy person has some level of trauma and issues that they need to work through. And as much as we don't want to be a trauma in our children's life, we will always have a bit of like responsibility as to why they have some sort of trauma
too as a result.
So just knowing that I'm responsible for this little brain and to teach it in the best way, I want to make sure that as a mom, I'm being the best version and the best mom that I can be to a child, you know. I don't want to repeat patterns in my lineage. I don't want to repeat patterns that my parents taught me or subconsciously taught me that now I can see is not healthy and it's not good for a child. You know, I don't want to repeat patterns. So as much as we try to avoid making mistakes, we are humans. And I just think that that's what terrifies me the most, is knowing that I'm responsible for a little human being and I'm responsible for how they're going to turn out as humans and as adults. And yeah, it's just, you know, and a lot of people don't think of it in that way, but yeah, I think that's what's...
It's true.
Yeah.
And that's why I think a lot about, because I know I want to be a mom, so I think so much about how I want to parent because of that. I know I'm still going to like probably fuck it up somehow because we're not perfect, but I want to still give it like my best.
Yeah.
You know, so I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm. Scared.
How do you know it's going to be like a...
Because you think I can't feel?
You're like, that's how well we know each other. Like, oh, damn it. Here comes a good question. On behalf of us single ladies, what do you, like, what do boundaries look like in the context of a healthy relationship?
Ooh, that's a really good question. What do boundaries look like in the context of a healthy relationship? I think I kind of talked about this in one of the episodes, but for me, it's the non-negotiables and being able to voice whenever I'm feeling uncomfortable. Because I don't think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, personally, I don't think like if you're in a healthy relationship that any boundaries specifically would be crossed. Because I think naturally your partner would know what you're okay and what you're not okay with. Also because if you guys have had a conversation of what you expect of each other as a couple, there shouldn't be a reason to overstep boundaries.
But I was gonna say that it's like assuming you communicated it, you know, like not you guys, but I'm just saying for someone that might be listening.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that in order to be in a healthy communication. In a healthy relationship, you have to communicate. Like, there's no way you can expect to have a healthy relationship without over communicating things with your partner.
So what you're saying is if you want to have healthy boundaries in a healthy relationship, you need to communicate what those are.
Everything goes back to communication.
I'm glad you're saying that, though, because I do think that...
There is something I want to say, so remind me.
Okay. Because I do think there can be an expectation that, like, when you meet someone and they're healthy and it's a healthy relationship, that you will just know what to do, you know? But that's why I like that you're sharing, like,
No, because you guys are two individual people. You're not the same people. So you're not going to have the same thoughts. You're not going to communicate the same way. You're not going to have the same love languages. You're not going to handle conflict differently. It doesn't matter how healthy you are. You individually, you still are two individual people coming together. You guys don't think the same. You guys don't speak the same. You guys don't walk the same. You don't talk the same.
Yeah.
So I think the whole key to having a healthy relationship is communication and over communicate, because over communicating will allow for boundaries to flow naturally without you feeling like you constantly have to ask and set your boundaries with your partner. I don't think in a healthy relationship you have to continuously set boundaries, because if so, then you're not in a healthy relationship. I think boundaries are set when, or need to be made whenever someone keeps overstepping your comfort level, your comfort zone, or is disrespecting you. What I do want to say about like boundaries and communication. So my boyfriend knows this. He knows I over communicate, and so does my family. My mom, my dad, my brothers, they get tired of me. They get tired of me because they tell me, they're like, Nat, like you grew up to be, they're like, we don't know what happened in your life for you to be so like stern and straight up now. They're like, but like,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, like basically like what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And they get annoyed at me. They call me the family manager, by the way, because whenever something goes wrong, I will be the first one to text in the family group message. Or when I'm like, okay, we all need to talk, we'll all sit down and have a family meeting. My mom used to have family meetings with us all the time, so we're all kind of used to like getting together and hashing shit out. So now whenever I feel like I need to voice something, I'll either say it in the text message or we'll get together and have a family meeting.
I love
Freaking
that.
Capricorn and Aries rising here. And they tell me like, you know, like Nat, like you over communicate things. And I'm like, well, how can you guys as my family members know what I'm feeling or what I want and need from you guys if I'm not over communicating, you know? And sometimes they're like, oh, like, well, we get it. I'm like, but do you get it though? Because I've communicated this with you at least 2 or 3 times, and we're here again having this conversation again. So what is it? You know?
I like that.
And then so they look at me and they're like, shit, well, she's right, because she's told us, you know. And eventually they get their shit together and they start acting right, like if I'm the mom, right? Like if I'm the mom. But yeah, no, everybody, like my whole family tells me that like I over communicate and I'm like very blunt, but it's like you have to be, especially like with family members, because you're not in an intimate relationship with them, so they don't know you on that level. So you have to communicate those things. Same thing with friends as well. So now they know what boundaries to cross and what not to cross and whatnot. But I think communication is like the easiest way, and not even easiest, because a lot of people find it really hard to communicate their feelings and what they're feeling. But yeah, I think communication is probably like the ground level for everything.
I don't know why, but that made me picture you as a mom. Like I feel like you're gonna do that with your kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Like family meetings.
I really want to be like that kind of mom that allows for their children to express their feelings and let them know that they're okay to express their feelings. And if they need to cry, that I'll hold them while they're crying. I'm not going to tell them to shut up, or I'm going to spank you and I'll give you a reason to cry, you know? And I most definitely will have family meetings.
I think it's important.
With my husband too.
Yes.
Sit down, because you're part of this
Dan.
family.
You know,
Mom is not okay right now. Sit your ass down.
Everyone sit down. I feel like Dan is gonna be like with his tail between his legs too. It's like you're part of the kids. Like
no, I know. You know, honestly, the image that I just had is like the kids lined up. Like if I'm gonna have a lot of kids, that's ugly. Only 2 kids.
Like 5 kids.
Like the 2 kids lined up with Dan in between, with both of their heads down.
Like I feel like he's gonna get in trouble with them. Like
no, most definitely. Are you kidding me?
What's funny is like we do family meetings, but I feel like they're like an unhealthy version, if I'm being honest, because one, we're all fire signs in my family. Except I think my dad's technically a Capricorn, but he's like right on the cusp
of Aquarius.
What's right before?
Oh, before he's Sagittarius.
I feel like my dad's like the day after something, because to me he feels more like a little bit more Sag. So I feel like in my head, like we're all fire, including Maya. And so when we have our family meetings, it's not like, you know, oh, we send a text. It's just like everyone's at dinner and you just drop the bomb and then we all like go at it. And then we find our middle ground and then we're like, all right, cool. Like, and it's funny because my brother's girlfriend, she's a Virgo. So I feel like when she came into that, she was just like freaking out, you know, like so what funny. Is happening right now. But I think by now she's learned that's just how because we air things out. Like we don't hold things in. It's just like our approach, I think, is not.
That's funny. You have me thinking about my family signs now. I think we have all of them, actually. Do you? Yeah. I'm the only earth sign. So which is why I'm the family manager and I ground everyone. Yes. Like come back to reality.
They need you. Because my mom's Leo.
Your mama's a Leo?
My mom's a Leo. My brother is also Aries, and my dad is Sag, really Capricorn, but I feel like more Sag. So, and Maya, I forget what she is, but I'm pretty sure I know she's fire too. Yeah. So we got a lot of fire in my family.
Yeah, David and Alex, they're air, so they're very like, which is why I constantly have to like drill shit in them. Danny is a fire, which is why he's such a freaking popcorn. My mom is water, which is why she's emotional, and my dad, he's an air, but he's an Aquarius, so he's very like emotionally detached. And so then here comes me trying to manage everyone.
Wait, what is your mom?
My mom is Scorpio.
Oh. I feel like she doesn't strike me as a Scorpio.
No, she's a very she's like a sweet Scorpio. She's like the very emotional, sweet Scorpio. My aunt is also Scorpio, and they're
because some Scorpios are like your Tia. She strikes me more as a Scorpio.
Oh hell yeah, no, she's crazy.
But you're not your mom, because your mom's so grounded, and I feel like Scorpios they have like a more fiery side to them. So
yeah, but. I mean, if it can make sense. And then I'm dating a freaking Gemini and air sign, so you could just imagine that.
Oh my god. So you're literally the only... Oh my gosh. We need earth signs, you guys.
Yeah. I love earth signs.
They ground us.
Yeah.
They keep our life together.
For sure. For sure. I feel like there was another thing that I had in my mind, but it slipped in regards to like communication, and I don't think it's that important, but
Oh yeah, there was something I wanted to maybe let me say it what I was gonna say, and maybe it'll come back to you.
okay.
It's not long. Yeah, so when it comes to communicating boundaries, one thing I have learned that I would love to pass on is, one, you do need to communicate what your boundaries are. Because I feel like sometimes when I'm trying to teach clients about boundaries, they'll get mad that someone crossed their boundary, but they've never even communicated it to the person. So don't get offended, because sometimes most of the time, people are not trying to cross a boundary. They just don't even realize it's there. Because you have to remember, boundaries are not a physical thing you can see.
Yeah.
They're energetic. So don't get impatient or frustrated if you need, well, not if you need, like you need to communicate what your boundaries are to people. I've also found that oftentimes we do need to communicate it more than once. Just like how you were saying, you find yourself over communicating. And same thing. Sometimes people's intention is not to hurt you. Do be mindful. Obviously, if you're constantly having to tell someone, you have to draw a line at some point.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, is this person just not respecting my boundary, or do they just need a reminder? Like, are they just not getting it?
Also paying attention to how they react when you're expressing how
Exactly.
you're feeling.
Yeah. Like, what is their reaction? But just know that with boundaries, number one, you have to communicate what it is, because everyone has different boundaries. You can't expect people to just know what yours are. And then it's okay to have to, like, maybe remind someone again. Just be mindful that it's not all the time. But I wanted to share that.
I agree. And I think, so one, maybe because the battery is almost going to die. So what advice would you give for someone who has to constantly draw a boundary with someone, and they continuously overstep that boundary? How would you know when to walk away, or would you recommend walking away, and when would you?
I think my approach, depending on who it is, like if it's some random person, like walk away right away. I think if it's like a family member, someone closer to you. So my approach would be to first communicate verbally. Then it would be to take action. So for example, if it's like you told someone to not call you between certain times because you're working and they still keep calling you, like don't answer the phone. And then if that still doesn't work, then I would have to set like a clearer boundary, whether it's like walking away or, cutting connection, really creating distance and space between you and that person. So I think those are the steps I would take. What about you?
No, it's similar. It's the same. Yeah, but I think it depends on who it is. For sure.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to react differently, but those are the same exact steps that I would take.
Yeah.
I wouldn't cut someone dry and cold if
unless
from the
it's
start.
like they do something really bad, I think.
Yeah, or unless like it's just someone that you don't know that blatantly disrespected you, like bye.
Yeah.
But if it's like a friend or family, same steps that you said. Exactly the same. And I just want to say that don't ever feel like you owe anybody an apology for your boundaries. Always know that you can have them unapologetically, and you honoring those boundaries is you respecting yourself and knowing your self-worth, and you're also teaching people how to treat you. And I think that that's what's most important too. People see that you respect yourself, they will respect you too. But if people see that you don't respect yourself and you have no boundaries, no standards, no expectation for yourself, everyone will treat you that exact same way. Everyone is a mirror of you. So just keep that in mind.
Truth. Well, thank you guys for listening to today's episode.
We hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, send us a DM, or if you want us to cover this topic a little bit more, let us know.
Yes, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.